Hello viewers, I've been contemplating doing some videos comparing the different series of Uniden DEC 6 telephones out there, and the other day I had somebody ask to do a video on the 1580 and the 1483, so I figured now was as good a time as ever. So here on the right we have the Uniden 1580, and on the left we have the Uniden 1483. Now the Uniden 1580 is the preceder. That one came out, I believe, in 2008 or 2009, and the 1483 did not come out until 2 or 3 years later, maybe in 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. And that was not long before Uniden stopped producing telephones here in the United States of America. So the 1483 series was one of the last few telephones that Uniden produced. And the two telephones here, they're very similar in a lot of respects, and they're kind of aimed for the same market as far as price goes and functionality goes. But as with most different versions of different products, the newer model fixes some problems for the old one, but it also creates some problems that the old one didn't have. So we'll go through and we'll look at all the different functions and features of these telephones. So first let's take a look at the bases. So I'll omit the handsets for a moment. So the 1580 base, in my opinion, the 1580 base is just a lot more aesthetically pleasing. If you're sitting here on the table, just looks very very clean and fluid. This one, while it's not an eyesore, it's just not quite, in my opinion, it's not quite as, it doesn't blend in quite as well, you know, but that's not terribly important. So the 1580 base is kind of like horizontal, if you will. So hold on, let me use this. I'm doing this video in one cut, so if there's mistakes and stuff like this, it is what it is. So the 1580 base has a bigger footprint because it's, you know, kind of horizontally laid out, and the 1483 base, it does have a little bit smaller of a footprint because it's kind of more of a vertical design, but you can see that it's really not all that much of a difference. Neither of these bases are particularly large. So there you go, that's the size comparison. There's two other things I really would like to note about the bases. This base here, if you want to wall mount it, it's basically impossible because you need some crazy adapter that hooks on, I believe, here, and excuse me, it's it didn't come with the phones, and it was one of those things you had to buy separate from Uniden, and I don't know what they charged for it. I believe there was, I don't think it was crazy, but I believe there was a charge for it, and I've tried to locate it in the more recent years, and it's just a rare breed. I can't find it anywhere, and I never see these things being sold with the adapter. So that's definitely a design flaw with this base. That was fixed with this base. This base has a standard 2 screws wall mount, fit on most standard wall mount plates, or just drilled into your wall directly, and it's very easy to go. The other thing is this, if you were to mount it on a wall, will sit flush like that and not look crazy. This would stand out like this and probably come a good 3-4 inches off the wall, and depending on where you have it, that would be kind of strange. So when it comes to wall mounting, the 1483 base is definitely the better option. So as far as the handsets go, I think taking the handset in and out of this base is a lot better. This is really sturdy in here. It's not going to fall over. You can shake the table and you'll be fine. This one, however, it's just really awkward. You can't get a good grip on it. You have to kind of pull it up like this, and it's really close to just like falling out. It's too vertical. See, it almost just went out there. It really, I mean, it can fall out. I've had it happen before. So, as far as the handset goes, sitting in the base, you know, this is a lot better. You get your hand right behind it. You can pick it up. It's easy. It's not going to fall over. This one, you kind of got to make sure it's there, and it doesn't really sit in place. It's kind of just there. This one actually, you know, sits in place. The base here is just flat, so it just kind of, you know, whatever. You can see there's a pretty good indent here, and this really goes in there and stays. So, yeah. The other thing that's really stupid about this base, and this is one of those things, like, I don't understand how in the world this got past the design phase. You can't really press these buttons without holding the base. It just slides. What in the world? Now, if the handset's in there, there's a little bit extra weight, and you can kind of do it. But my handset's out of the base all the time. I want to just come over here and just hit play, and it's like, I mean, if you really, you know, force it, you can do it. But you really have to hold it like this and operate it like this, which is dumb. The 1580 base, you just use it. And it's easy, and so aside from the wall mount on this base stinks. A moron designed that base. Well, a moron that wall mounts their phones. So yeah, that's definitely, for the most part, I think the base was a big step back from the 1580. Okay, so let's look at the handsets. Physically, the handsets are pretty similar in shape. I think this one is like a hair thinner, but not by much. Now on the backs, you'll see that this one has this weird grip on here, which is a brilliant concept because these telephones, they are kind of slick, but honestly this does not help at all. It just doesn't. If you were to hold this with your shoulder, it actually makes it like worse, because for whatever reason, you know, going this way, it seems to slide even easier. You know, maybe this way isn't so bad, but like this, it just slides. So they tried to fix that, but they didn't really do that well. Honestly, it more of just feels weird when you're holding it. But that aside, both of these telephones are very ergonomic to hold in your hand like this. Of course, the earpiece or whatever has zero ergonomics to it whatsoever. But as far as holding it in your hand goes, this is really comfortable. Same thing with this one, really. They're pretty much the same shape. Aside from that oddity, they're both pretty comfortable to hold. Now, let's take a look at the batteries, because this is a huge difference. Both of these batteries are in fact the original batteries to the telephones. So you can see that the Uniden 1580 uses a physically larger battery. Now, the physical size of the battery does not at all indicate the amount of power that it will hold. However, in this particular instance, this bigger battery does actually have a larger capacity. The 1483 uses a 300 milliamp hour battery, and the 1580 uses a 650 milliamp hour battery, and they are different chemistries as well. This one is a nickel cadmium, and this one is a nickel metal hydride. Now, there's a lot of debate about using nickel cadmium batteries in cordless phones, And a lot of people will get very upset when they discover that these phones came with nickel cadmium batteries. And while in theory that is true, in all due reality, I don't find that the nickel cadmium batteries wear out very quickly at all. You can see the date code on this one is 2009, and this battery has in fact been in use since 2009, and it still works just fine. I can talk on this thing for hours without a problem. So yeah, I mean, from a technical standpoint, in theory, would a nickel metal hydride battery last longer for the way most people use their phones? Quite possibly, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the charging system or these batteries are just really good quality, these last a very long time. And I know people are going to blow up the comments, hey, it's nickel cadmium, it's going to get memory. It doesn't. I don't know why. It just doesn't. And no, I don't keep it off the cradle all the time. I charge this thing up whenever I feel like it, and it works okay. So, say what you want about the batteries. I know the theory, but it's not happening here. This battery, on the contrary, I find these batteries aren't the greatest. I find I can get a couple years out of these batteries, and that's about it. The other thing, so the battery life on this telephone is, they claim over 10 hours of talk time and 7 days of standby. I can talk on this thing for hours and I never see the battery thing run down, so I believe that claim completely. This one, however, they claim maximum is 7, so they're claiming at least 3 hours less, and I don't really believe that it gets 7 hours of talk time, because I will go through the charging this phone in a matter of a day or two. No, maybe 2 days, 2 or 3 days. By the end of the first day, it'll be down 1 pipper, and over the course of 2 or 3 days, it'll be down, 2 or all the pippers. And sometimes I talk maybe 2 hours a day, sometimes 3 on a busy day. So, I mean, it's coming close to its claimed lifespan, but I mean, 7 hours of talk time is not a whole lot, especially because if you're using speakerphone, it's going to be probably half of that. So, some people will say that it's better to have the nickel metal hydride battery in there, and in a sense it is, but I don't know. It doesn't last as long, at least in this case. And maybe if they had a 650 milliamp one in there, it'd be different, or it would be different rather. But they decided not to do that. Now the other thing about the batteries, and this is the other reason why I prefer these, is that there are a lot of high quality, very high capacity replacements available for these. You can get ones that are, I've seen up to 1800 milliamps, and when you're coming from 650, 1800 is a pretty good increase. So you could go from, in theory, you can go from 10 hours of talk time to 30 per charge, which is really quite remarkable. And the batteries are pretty cheap, less than $2 a piece usually, maybe $2.30 I think was the last, $2.39 maybe was the price I paid for the last set I ordered. These, on the other hand, the replacements I find just aren't that great, and they don't last real long. I've bought various different brands, and they all seem to give me about 2, maybe 3 years before they start getting weak. So that's not the greatest at all. And there's not a whole lot of high capacity options out there. I think at most you can get like a 900 milliamp, 800, and that's on the high end. So, I think I would prefer to have this come in the phones, even though, in theory, the nickel metal hydride would last longer in most cases. I think the nickel cadmium ones do pretty well on cordless phones. That's just my opinion, but that's kind of a, I guess there's no real right answer for that one. So, okay, so let's put these back together and let's take a look at some of the features on the phone. So, they both have time and date display, or no, not time and date. They both have a time display on the standby time. You can see this one says 12:50 p.m. Gotta get another drink here. And this one over here also says 1250. You'll see this one here also shows the date, which is kind of nice. Now, I will say that the time is easier to read off of this one for two reasons. Number one, when it's sitting in the cradle, the angle is better. This one, I'm standing a little bit higher than the camera is looking at the phones, and the 1483, the top of the clock is cut off, and it's hard to really see it. This one I can see perfectly fine, and the numbers are also a fair bit bigger. This has a typical 3-line dot matrix or whatever type display. This one does not. This is, you know, the top of the display is just those characters, and then the bottom 2 lines are, I guess, dot matrix you could call it. So maybe that's not correct, I'm not really sure, but anyways, you get the point. So yeah, so I like having the date display, but being able to read the time easier kind of offsets that, so not really sure which one I take in that respect. Both the handsets are backlit. Whoa, see, there we go, this one's hard to get off the base. Both of the handsets use an orange backlight. They're pretty equivalent. Both pretty easy to read. The orange is nice because if you go to use it at night, it's not quite so obnoxious. Some of the white backlights on like Panasonic phones are really pretty blinding in the dead of night. This is pretty nice. It's good enough to read clearly everything, but it's not enough to, you know, be blinding. So let's see here. One other note on the standby screens. The caller ID. This is really important. This telephone, I have a 6-handset system, and the caller ID drives me crazy because it's stored in each individual handset, and so when you cancel it out on one handset, it doesn't cancel out on the others. So I'll come in the bedroom, clear out the caller ID. I'm not going to show you all my calls, but I'll clear out the caller ID. Now when I go in the computer room later, the phone there is going to show 12 new calls. I'm going to think I missed a whole bunch of calls, and it's just kind of annoying to have to go around the house and cancel out 6 different caller ID logs. This one, however, is stored in the base, and so if you cancel it out on one phone, it cancels out on all of the telephones. Now, there is a disadvantage to that, and that is the fact that it takes, and this goes for the phone book as well, it takes a long time. Well, I shouldn't say a long time, but it's laggy when you're going through the list. So let me see here how I'm going to do this. I'll do this. Let's cover half the display here. Let's see. Actually, no, I'll just do this. I'll just show the time because there's no private information there. So I'm going to open a call log here. Opens right away, and I can scroll through these as fast as I want to, which is good because I have to do a lot of scrolling on this phone. On this telephone, okay, I'm going to open the call log. There's about a second or two delay there. And see, you just can't scroll through this all that quickly. Again, it's not a huge problem, but I know some people, I've read reviews for a lot of different phones, and a lot of people, because this is how most phones work today, and a lot of people complain about, listen, a lot of people, but there's people that complain about that lag, and honestly, it is kind of annoying, because it's with everything, even in the redial, it's like that as well. See, it does the please wait thing for the redial, please wait for the phone book, so it's just, there's a lot of lag in this telephone when you're looking at the numbers. Oh yeah, phone book in this one, it's so stored in the base, so all your handsets automatically get the phone book. This one, it's stored in the handsets, and so you have to copy it over. I'd prefer the copying. I'll tell you why. If you have, like the telephone I have in my computer room, I do a lot of business calls with that telephone. And so I have different people I call than, say, with the phone in the living room. And I want the phone books to be separate. It's easy enough to go in here, go into copy, and just send the numbers to the other phone if you want them in there. Of course, if you make a change, everything gets out of sync and you got to start all over again. But, you know, how often do you really do that? I don't do that very often anyways. So, that's you know, that there. So, you'll see the charge lights are different here. This one has a charge light on the base, and this one has a charge light up on the handset. Don't like that because when there's a message, this just flashes, and this is as normal. This flashes and you don't know if it's charging or not, and it's just crazy. So I'd rather the charge light be on the base. But neither of these charge lights are obnoxious. They're both pretty good. They're visible enough to see, but they're not so blaring bright that they'll keep you up at night like some other telephones. The Panasonic, for instance. Some other charge lights are just crazy. Anyways, so that's pretty good. Buttons. This is definitely a step back on the buttons. For this one anyways. These buttons are absolutely brilliant, and there's been recently more manufacturers that are picking up on this. The writing for the numbers is actually underneath the button, and so it's never going to wear off. You can use this thing 100 times a day, and these buttons are never going to wear off. And because they're plastic, they're probably not going to lose their conductivity anytime soon either. I find that the plastic buttons just work. Very rarely do I come across a plastic button phone that doesn't work, or where the buttons don't work. This one, you know, maybe these buttons have a little bit of a nicer feel to them, maybe, but they're not going to last. The numbers are going to wear off eventually, and they'll get dirty over the years, and they'll stop working very well. So, you know, if you're going to have a phone subject to heavy use, these are the buttons that you want. So, alright. Button layout. I think this one's a little better because it's very easy to have the speakerphone, the talk, and then the end all right there. And this is pretty, oh man, I think I just showed some numbers. I'll have to cut that part out. Well, anyways, it's pretty easy to navigate with this thing. On the other hand, this button, I find it's not quite as easy to press. It's not terrible, but it's just, there's something awkward about it, and probably because it's a square, I guess. I don't know. I like the other button a little better. This layout's not illogical either. You know, talk and then speakers up there. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just happen to like having all the call initiation controls right up here at the top. And the intercom is up there. On this one, the intercom is down here at the bottom, which is okay. I'd rather it be up at the top. Interestingly enough, redial and pause are in the same place on both phones. Menu is in a good place on both phones. It's intuitive enough to just go in there and select and whatever. Sound quality is generally comparable. I think the earpiece sound quality between the two telephones is more or less the same. I will say, however, that the speakerphone of the 1483 has a little bit of an edge on the 1580, because with the 1580 up at the highest volume it does kind of distort a little bit, but the 1483 remains pretty clear. Now both of these speakerphones I think could use more volume, but I find the speakerphone, especially in the 1580, works quite well, which is unusual for these handset speakerphones. A lot of times they're just not the greatest. But this one I find is good. The pickup is good, and aside from, like, when you're outside, I would like to have a little more volume. Aside from that, clarity is good, and the quality, especially on the 1580, is quite lifelike. But both of these are pretty good speakerphones. And as for the range, pretty comparable. I think the 1483 may have a real slight edge on the range, but it's nothing significant. And it's really nothing noteworthy. The range is pretty comparable on both of these telephones. So the functionality and the features is pretty much all the same. There was a ringtone that they omitted. This has the Star Spangled Banner as a ringtone. And they took that out of that one, and I don't like that because I used to use that ringer all the time. In fact, you probably heard it before. So I'm not sure why they did that. Probably because they're manufacturing it in China or whatever. But that was kind of annoying. They replaced it with Beethoven or something. Let's see. Yeah, they replaced it with that. Fortunately, it still has Merry Christmas. At least it still has that. Anyways, ringer volume is pretty much the same on both of them. Could be louder. That's one of the things I don't like about these telephones, and this is for both of them. The handset ringtones just aren't that loud. They're not unusably quiet, but they could be a lot louder. But the volume is pretty much the same on both of them. Let's see, what else there's to say about it. Bass ringtone is the same volume. Answering machine works the same way on both of them. Oh, let's look at this. The scrolling through the menus. Because this has the date and time and stuff at the top, you only get two options on the screen at the same time. And then once you go into a handset, you only get one option showing up at the same time. And this I just find is really not intuitive, and it's kind of difficult to work with. I don't care that I'm in the handset setup menu. I don't think that's really critical to see. I'd rather have just been taken to this menu and be able to see at least two of the options at once. On this phone, you can see all three of the options. It's just, oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh, doggone it, of all the things I could have selected. I can't get that to stop now. What am I going to do here? I have to remove the battery because there's nothing to register it to. Okay, let's start over. Let's try that again. Okay, so once this comes up, so you'll see that when I go into handset setup, for instance, it does show handset setup, which again I could do without, but at least having two options shown at the same time, it just makes it easier to navigate. At least I think so anyways. So, yeah, that's really all there is to say about these phones. I think I've been blabbling on about these phones for almost a half an hour now. You know, which one do I like better? I'm sure will come up. You know, it's a case of, you know, how you're going to use it. Really, the only thing I particularly like about this one is the fact that the caller ID clears out on all the phones. That's huge, because that drives me crazy, because this is what I use all the time, and it drives me crazy that it doesn't clear out. You know, but honestly, the base design, the battery life, the button longevity, I'd have to go with this one. I think overall, for the way I use the phone, I'd take this one. But they're both good phones, and this one is definitely a close contender behind it, and it works well too. Oh, there's one other thing I'll mention, and this is another reason why I like this one better. When you're talking on earpiece mode, the pickup is pretty good on this one. This one, you can't speak quietly and them still hear you. The gate on this one is very high, and it cuts off, if you speak quietly, a lot of what you say. So that's another one of the reasons why I like this one better. That's not an issue with the speakerphone. Both the speakerphones are pretty sensitive, but when you're on talk mode, and if you're speaking in normal volume, this works perfectly fine. It's just that sometimes at night I want to talk on the phone quiet, people are sleeping, and can't do that with this one. This one you can do that with. So overall, I would take this one. The outgoing volume's a little better, the batteries are better, the buttons are better, and you know, I like this one better. Not by much, you know. Like I said, they're both pretty good phones, and I've used this one before as my primary phone, and it works fine. But you know, this one it just feels more solid too. This one kind of has like a hollow feel to it, especially the base. This one I don't know, it just seems sturdier. So all in all, I'd take this one, but I'm not knocking that phone at all. It's a good phone too. So hopefully this was interesting to somebody, and if it was, I will do more videos like this with other telephones.